Hello, everyone, and welcome to the best and worst of Walt Disney World, brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel, experts at helping you plan the perfect Disney vacation. Be sure to visit them on the web at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. And we're also brought to you by disboards.com, a great place to continue the best and worst conversation after the show, or to help us come up with future topics. I am your host, Ryan O'Clavin, and in this week's episode, we're going to be discussing the top 4 worst things about Epcot. And to help me have this conversation, we've got Mr. Corey Fiasco.
Hi, guys.
I'm not saying your full last name ever, just
Fiasco's
so we know
good.
that, okay? So we've got Steve Porter.
Hello.
And in the back, Craig Williams.
Hi.
The man who makes it all happen. So we've been continuing this series of best and worst videos where we talk about the best or the worst of the things just in general that we like about parks, and it's time for Epcot to be on the chopping block. And today we're all in a negative mood, so we decided we're going to do the worst. But hopefully this will help you on your vacation to kind of plan and brace yourself for these sort of things. So the first thing we're going to be talking about are the festivals. This was a Craig Williams introduction into here. I understand why these are on the negative side of it, but Craig, I'd like you to talk about it and tell me why you think this belongs on the worst list.
I'll go a step further and say I almost crafted this entire list.
I'll go a step further and say he did.
And I definitely had to put the festivals at the highlight of it at the 4th spot, because you know what, there are some good aspects of the festivals. It does keep Epcot feeling fresh in a way, a little bit changing here and there. The problem is, for me, it doesn't change enough. And I know you can give us the whole, we're locals and we go all the time, and that's why we get bored with this stuff. I go to the Magic Kingdom very often, maybe once every 2 weeks. I don't get bored with the Magic Kingdom, and they don't have a rotating festival around there. There's, it's just, when you're shoving the festivals down your throat, like you can't walk through World Showcase because you hit another booth after booth after booth. And I know you can just ignore it, but some are harder, like the Festival of the Arts, where then you have tents set up with art all around there too. It is cool for some people, but for me, it makes me not want to be there.
Your park should not be dependent upon festivals.
It draws in extra crowds. It really congests the entire area. It makes it almost get like this hype over, it's only here for a limited time, so we have to go crazy with it. And then it's the same food year after year after year, and I just am so bored with it.
I'll add, I mean, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I just don't like how all the festivals are kind of variations on the same thing. So they all have art somewhere. They all have, the landscaping is obviously the biggest in the flower and garden, but there's obviously some topiary
They do it for the holiday stuff too.
Yeah, things going on, for all the festivals, and then the food. So it's just kind of like one has more of one of those 3 things, and then that's the festival, where I'd rather just be totally dedicated to, or have just like very sparse of the other.
And the only one I speak highly of anymore is Festival of the Holidays, and that's because all they did was take everything they were already doing with the holidays year after year after year after year for as long as I've been here during the holiday season, and then they added these food booths on it and slapped a name onto it. Otherwise, it's the same stuff they've always had, and they're just now making it a thing on that. So that's why I'm okay with that one, but I would be more than happy to flush Food and Wine down the toilet along with Flower and Garden and Festival of the Arts. It's just, I show up, I go back maybe once or twice, and like, why do I need this?
I would say I think they just need to start from the ground up and start over on how these festivals should be. Because I agree that they're totally getting stale, and I agree that there are problems like crowds and stuff, but I think if they totally just like the crowds will probably still be a problem, but if they totally redid this from the ground up and thought of something new for the next festival the next year, I think I would like it a lot more. But my problem is, you're right, you go to back to the Canada little booth, and it's going to be the steak from Le Cellier.
And the cheese soup, yeah.
And the cheese soup. That's going to be, they need more life, and
this year in a thimble.
Right.
That's the negative feelings I have toward it, is that it always seems to start really strong, and then it's always about how much smaller can we make the food but also increase the price at the same amount of time. And like, you just paid a lot of money to get in this park. Like, I feel like by flooding it with this stuff, it cheapens it but also makes it very expensive. With that said, I don't want anything to go away. I do like the Food and Wine Festival. I like the idea of it, but it is the crowds. I want, like you said, I want it to maybe be more like how Disneyland kind of celebrates theirs, where it's not just the booths, which they also have, and I understand it's a lot smaller scale, but they're restaurants, they're sit-down restaurants, they're quick-service restaurants, incorporate items from the festival into their menus, so you don't have to just go to the booth. It's like, okay, well, this week I'm dining at this restaurant, and now they have this featured item because it's part of the festival. Like, I wish they did more of that.
All you need to do is go to the Swan and Dolphin Food and Wine Classic once, and that will forever ruin the Epcot International Food and Wine Festival for you. It is such a poor and shoddy setup compared to how Swan and Dolphin does it. It's just, that's how it is. But I'm glad that it brings people in. But yeah, I think you said it best. It does kind of cheapen the entire experience overall.
So what I will say is it is kind of awkward that there's almost always a festival going on at Epcot, and then there's, a couple week periods here and there where there is no festival, and those are very refreshing. I really enjoy them because the crowds do die down and there's more space to walk around openly. However, I do really enjoy all the festivals. Like, I look forward to Flower and Garden, I look forward to Festival of the Arts. I think a big part of that might be because I'm so deep into pin collecting that I'm really looking forward to those releases too. But I really look forward to the food and the change of scenery, even though it's not all that much. I still really like them all.
I will also say, not to be depressing, but you are the newest person in this room right now, and you've been in Orlando for the shortest. I think maybe by like your second or third and fourth year of doing the same thing, you might say like, oh yeah, this is the same as it was the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that, and
Well, that's good then. He offers a fresh.
At least you have a positive attitude, unlike the rest of us.
As we are all dressed in black, I'm realizing, and you're wearing a bright pink floral shirt. For those of us watching, are you listening? You just want to know.
But that could be entirely true, though. Like, this is my first. This is actually my first Festival of the Holidays, and I think my first festival, I came in at the back end of one Festival of the Arts before, but previously every year my trips fell around Flower and Garden, Food and Wine every year. So that could be entirely true.
Well, with that festival and with any day at Epcot and walking around the World Showcase, you get yourself what we like to call the T-shirt people. And when I say we like to call it, that's the name we gave it to them right before we started recording. Now, these are the groups of people who are...
It's like the T-shirt drunks.
I don't want to. Yeah, exactly. I'm not judging anybody who's got matching T-shirts, because we all know me. I like to make a good themed T-shirt. But it is like, those are the people you see, and you're like, oh, they're going to be so like. I feel so old saying this. They're going to be so rowdy later because they've been drinking around the world, and you're like, and that's fine. I'm not against people drinking around the world. I think that's a thing, a rite of passage at Epcot that should be. But it should be done responsibly. Drink a glass of water for every glass of alcohol you have, at least, stuff like that.
And, we personally have friends who have done it, and we've hung out with them while they're wearing their T-shirts and going around. I'm not going to drop names because you already know who you are, and I don't want you to feel bad about yourselves. It's when you come for a week, I don't think you necessarily, unless you're at Epcot every day, I don't think you necessarily notice it as much. But every single time I go into Epcot, as soon as I see the matching T-shirts with Drink Around the World on it at World Showcase, I know to actively avoid and go the opposite way of that group, because even if they're not drunk yet, at some point at the maybe 3 or 4 stops in, that's when they're going to hit pure levels of obnoxiousness, and it's just going to get worse from there. And it is like the one thing that drives me nuts more than anything about World Showcase is freaking idiots wearing matching T-shirts, just getting plastered and not thinking about the fact that there's more people there than just them.
Right. That's what it really comes down to. I don't care if you're getting drunk and having a great time, as long as you're doing it responsibly. Right. You are still being respectful of the people and your surrounding environments. Respect the park where you're at.
And in realizing that the Disney theme parks are filled with children, and so when you're cursing and falling into the street and vomiting in the middle of the World Showcase.
This is a scary scenario. You were describing like New Year's Eve in New York City.
Well, I'm just saying
when you're
that
mugging somebody as they
mean,
walk by.
I've seen that. I've seen one of my friends threw up in World Showcase, so I'm not shaming these people. I've been drunk in Epcot before, but when they're in large groups of people and they're all doing it and it's just like a giant group of messiness, it's just terrible.
Yeah. Well, moving on, the next on the list, we have the attractions. This is we think the number 2 worst thing about Epcot. I definitely agree with this. And that's okay. You can be like, oh, I love Soarin's my favorite attraction. I don't know why, but you could say that. That's not my favorite attraction. I don't want to be on the record as saying that. And like Test Track or Mission Space or whatever. But for me, I like when we were sitting making this list, I really realized I don't go on any attractions when I'm at Epcot because there's none when I'm there where I'm like, I love this one. And I can't think of a single one where if they were like, we'll remove it, I'd be like, oh, that's a bummer, except for Spaceship Earth.
Yeah, that seems like.
But even then, I'd be like, if they were like, we're gutting the entire thing and changing it into something else, but, along the same lines, that's cool and fine with me. I don't need it to look and sound exactly the same forever and always. Because when I first moved here, I think it was Jeremy Irons, and then it switched to Dame Judi Dench as it is now. But I don't really remember the Jeremy Irons one very well. But yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about this?
There's not really like an e-ticket attraction at Epcot that's my like must do. My wife Michaela loves Frozen Ever After, but it's not my absolute. I mean, I don't
think there's one where if somebody left and said I didn't do any attraction, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you missed out on.
You're right. I missed out on blank.
Every other park I have them.
So I think Epcot definitely needs some spicing up when it comes to like popular e-ticket attractions. However, like I don't know, I'm a big fan of like relaxing boat rides. And there in Epcot, we got 2 of them. We got Grand Fiesta Boat Tour and Living with the Land. I know that's not everybody's favorite, but they're 2 of my favorites. And then as well, a hidden gem, I think, is a total hidden gem. Again, some people, it's not for everybody, but Impressions de France.
Craig loves Impressions de France.
I like Impressions de France.
Yeah, it's a lot of attractions that they're good for people who love Disney. Mm-hmm. I think they can find the benefit and the joy out of them, but not everyone who travels to Walt Disney World is a huge Disney fan. They might be having their first or second experience with the parks. They might just be there because their kids like it or they have a friend who likes it. And I can see myself if I took my friends who don't care about Disney like I do, don't bother having annual passes, whatever. If I took them to Epcot, I hate saying it in this way, their main thing would be, let's go get drunk around the world. And I would be like, but we can go listen to Martin Short in Canada. And that would be like their worst day ever. And I think that's what a lot of Epcot is made up with. There's some like Soarin', I think anyone can find some joy in that. Same thing with Test Track, even though only the end is interesting anymore, Frozen Ever After. But like you can get I still have days where I like going on Living with the Land, but like I have to drag my wife on it. She doesn't like it, and she loves everything about Disney. It's a lot of attractions like that where huge Disney fans get invested in them, but you bring in someone who's not drinking the magic juice, then chances are they're like, what the heck is this?
It's also like, I don't want to say there's not really any attractions in Epcot where I'm like, oh, I hate it, this attraction's terrible. I mean, Figment is not great, but it's just kind of, they're just blasé. They don't do anything for me really, and anything major. You know what I mean? I get why people like the Frozen one is interesting because of the technical innovation in it. But some of it I feel like I don't like. Also, I don't really like Frozen. We already know I hate that movie. So
yeah, and we've had, since we moved here, a number of guests come up from Massachusetts to come visit, and they go to Disney World for a couple days. We usually do Magic Kingdom and Epcot. And at Magic Kingdom, they were excited for a bunch of rides, and these aren't big Disney fans. But at Epcot, they didn't. They were just like, "Oh, Epcot, drink around the world, let's go." They didn't care for any of the attractions. So I totally see Craig's point there.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of bring it home here, the number one worst thing about Epcot, and this is definitely I feel like Disney fans can kind of agree, is it doesn't have that that theme anymore, really, that like cohesive theme. I don't even know that 100% ever really did. I always think about it as like the educational park where I'm going to go and I'm going to learn about the countries and stuff. But then you like have that front part that doesn't, like Future World, where I don't know why we even call it Future World at this point at all. You know, why is it called that? Because there's nothing in there. Is Nemo and Figment part of the future? I don't get it.
Well, we're still building up to the future of where we test our cars. So right now we just build them and throw them on the road. We're going to start testing them one day.
Someday.
So future.
Yeah. So I don't, you know, some stuff where I'm like, that's what it's always been. And I guess I'm looking forward to this kind of reinvigoration into Epcot. You know, I do love the World Showcase. Like, I do love how you can go in and learn so much about all these different, you know, cultures and stuff and try different foods and the drinks and things. So like that, I always love. It's kind of but like, what does that have to do with the rest of it? And I'm not saying the whole park has to really, because I mean, look at Hollywood Studios, but for Hollywood Studios, it's like movies. You know, Magic Kingdom has all these different types of stories that come together, but Epcot's got these like two sagging parts of it that don't really do anything.
So I know a little bit about just like the history of Epcot. Was like they were going to be two separate theme parks, and then they realized budgeting the two together would have been a lot more difficult. So they just kind of
smushed it together
and said,
wow,
we could find the budget for this a lot
that
easier.
Makes a lot more sense then, because that's definitely what it feels like. It doesn't I like I said, I just feel like you're walking in and you don't get to Epcot until you're entering the World Showcase, and that to me is Epcot.
Well, really, I feel like with Walt Disney's like thought of a experimental prototype community of tomorrow, like
that should have been the front part.
That should have been the front part. That should have been the Future World part. Yeah. It should have been about living in the future and what future technologies we could have had. And they could have incorporated cool sponsorship and maybe had like, you know, the tech giants of the world to sponsor different pavilions. And imagine if like, Apple and Tesla and all these different huge companies.
Well, you know what was my favorite thing that it sounds like what you're talking about was the House of Innovations. Mm-hmm. And when that closed, I always thought that was the coolest thing ever, because it was stuff where I was like, I'm going to look this up later. I wonder if they can sell, if I could even afford something like this. And that to me was still the little Epcot. Like that was like, this is the experimental prototype community. You know, this is the house. You know, I could live in this house. And they were like, we can't update it that fast.
Well, and that's the problem with Future World. I mean, that's when it opened, it was about looking towards the future, and it was a nod at the past, but also looking towards the future at where it could go. But then once the future starts catching up with you and you can't adapt to it, and you're not going to put the money into really changing with it, then you have to slam on the brakes. And I don't think any of us here are saying that there is not beautiful theming inside World Showcase.
Oh, yeah,
it
not
is
at all.
Themed well, but there is still missing, as a park as a whole, they're missing a unifying theme. Like, I guess you could say it's maybe humanity in general, and you see different aspects of it, how humans deal with imagination, with the land, with the seas, with communication, with other people from different countries. But that's stretching. I mean,
it's way too broad, too.
Yeah, a theme should be pretty easy and to the point with it.
Let me ask you this too, because this is interesting. Do you feel like Hollywood Studios actually has a better, more cohesive theme than Epcot at this moment in time? I'm, as we're having this conversation, just thinking like, I very distinctly could identify something that definitely belongs in that park, you know?
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I don't know that I could do the same thing for Epcot.
That's a good point.
I think it does. I don't want to steal it completely from Universal. You know, Universal, one of their slogans, ride the movies. I mean, I would say a good slogan for Hollywood Studios, a theme of it is living the movies. And I think they deliver on it in that way. So you know that it works with that. But like you just said, with Epcot, if there's no outline theme that's like right there in front of you, what does go there? That's how you get Guardians of the Galaxy thrown in.
Just randomly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, there you have it. That is the top 4 worst things about Epcot. We've got festivals, T-shirt people, attractions, and the number one thing that we have the biggest issue with, the cohesive theme. So if you are watching this on iTunes, please feel free to, if you're watching this on iTunes, that is impossible. If you are listening on iTunes, please feel free to rate and review the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can feel free to subscribe to our channel where you'll get notified. If you click the bell, you'll get notified about all different types of content that we're uploading all the time. Please feel free to leave us comments in the video and maybe let us know about future topics you'd like to see us address, and let us know what you think are the worst things about Epcot. But for now, that is going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next time with another episode of the best and worst of Walt Disney World.